When we talk about social media, it can mean a lot of different things. I would tell people to divide in your head the paid media and then organic marketing. Organic marketing is anything you are doing on social media. It's generating activity, but you are not paying for. So for example, posting on a Facebook page, posting to your Instagram profile, doing a TikTok video, these are organic, right? You're not paying for them. All of those channels that I just mentioned, right? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, also have paid media. So you can go in, create an ad, sort of account, campaign, whatever, run ads, target an audience, and then you are paying for every click that you generate. And all of these channels operate pretty differently. And they also operate differently over time.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. We're back with another segment with our guest, Dan Barrett. And he is the head nerd at AdWords Nerds, the world's largest Google partner agency working only with real estate investors. I hope you've listened to the last 2 days of shows with him. We have dove into AdWords. We've talked more about Google Ads in the last 2 days than I ever thought I would ever know about Google Ads. He is definitely an expert in this space. But today, he's going to jump into different platforms that maybe you should be considering advertising or posting some ads, or at least posting content. It's interesting, which type of social media platform should you be considering? He's going to go into that. He's going to go more into Google Ads and just thinking about, the closure rate on Google Ads versus other platforms. And then, man, that strong follow-up process, you're going to hear him elaborate on that and a couple techniques that he has that other clients use that have closed more leads. You're going to hear that today. Dan, welcome back to the show. Honored to be able to do another segment and continue to dive into some of this marketing and AdWords and what in the world that means. Because most of us, it's a foreign language, right? And that's why we need to know somebody like yourself. I love it when, like we talked about in the first segment, you're laser focused on this thing, right? And so it's hard to beat somebody at that, right? If you're trying to do 12 things over here and one of those things is what this guy's doing over here, well, he's going to beat you every day of the week, right? And that's what you're doing. And so grateful to have you back.
Cool, man. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I am not successful at focusing in any part of my life except this one. So I will take that as a strong compliment. My reading pile next to my bed is an absolute mess. It's just everything and anything. So yeah, I love real estate investing, specifically working with investors, and I love Google Ads. So let's dive in, man. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the listeners again being with us today. If you did not listen to the last 2 days of segments with Dan, I would encourage you to go back. He has taught me and many listeners so much about what AdWords are, and just even thinking through an effective ad campaign. And some of it may seem overwhelming, right? To some of you, we even talk about that, but he helps us to break that down. But today I want to jump into some other things, even some other, types of social media and thinking about that versus Google and Facebook. And, I want Dan to help us to think about those, because even that, you're going to dive into some advertising. Well, where do I spend my money, right? I mean, it's most of us, especially when you're getting started, it's well, if I can only do this much a month, where's the biggest bang for my buck? Obviously, that's what everybody wants, but help us to think through that, Dan. One type of social media, is there one that's better for real estate investors, or does it depend on our audience? Or, how do we think about that as we're looking into doing some ads?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So let's clarify some terms, right? So when we talk about social media, it can mean a lot of different things. I would tell people to divide in your head the paid media and then organic marketing. Organic marketing is anything you are doing on social media. It's generating activity, but you are not paying for. So for example, posting on a Facebook page, posting to your Instagram profile, doing a TikTok video, these are organic, right? You're not paying for them. All of those channels that I just mentioned, right? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, also have paid media. So you can go in, create an ad, sort of account, campaign, whatever, run ads, target an audience, and then you are paying for every click that you generate. And all of these channels operate pretty differently. And they also operate differently over time, right? So I always say Facebook today is not the Facebook of 2 years ago. And so one of the things that I always tell people to be very careful of is you have to make sure that the information you are using to make decisions about your marketing is current. I'll give you an example from my personal life. I don't even have to talk about clients. Let's talk about my personal life. AdWords Nerds originally, when we started to grow, we used Facebook ads to reach investors. It was the easiest way to get in front of a large group of investors. By the way, still a good channel for that. I was getting on average a 15 times ROI on every dollar I put into Facebook. So I would put $1 in, I would get 15 out. Pretty darn good, right? And in online marketing world, when something like that happens, you post about it. You put a YouTube video out. I get a testimonial from someone that's like, yeah, I got 15 times ROI. And everyone's popping the champagne bottles and everything. Well, fast forward today, I don't run a single dollar of Facebook ads right now. Not a single one. And that is because the ROI on that channel, for me, dropped off a cliff last year when Apple put in privacy protections that sort of ruined the way that Facebook tracked users' behavior. Now, doesn't mean that I'm not saying by any means that Facebook is a bad channel. In fact, I'm going to go through the situations. I think it's still a great channel. But the thing I want people to remember is all of these systems, every market you're going to be in, every ad channel, every tactic, every strategy, every hack, they exist in time. And all of these systems change over time and change quite wildly over time. So you've got to make sure you are, again, connected to reality, connected to the reality on the ground. So anyway, that's the background there. Just want people to keep that in mind. So let's talk about today, what we see today. In terms of paid traffic, running ads, okay? Google ads, meaning primarily Google search ads, will generally have the highest return on investment and the best close rate, but will generally produce more expensive leads on average. So I always say, like, you imagine like Google ads is like the swanky party. They've got a velvet rope. You're going in, it's only the best people in town are there. Everyone's tucks and tails. You know, it's nice, right? Everything's good quality. You can really control who you're getting in front of, but you got to rent the Mercedes-Benz to show up that day. It's expensive. That's Google ads. For our money, and again, by the way, folks, please take everything I tell you with a grain of salt, like 4 grains of salt, because obviously my experience is filtered through my own business and my clients, and who knows, right? I'm biased in ways I don't even understand. So just take this for what it's worth. But for our money, Google Ads remains the highest return on investment platform, but it's expensive. It's often very competitive. Now, Facebook ads, paid traffic on Facebook, generally taking the form today of marketing to a broad geographical area. So Facebook, over the last few years, has dramatically restricted what real estate investors are allowed to use as targeting criteria. So it used to be you could show ads just to, I don't know, like people who spend a bunch of money on video games in this particular zip code who are 42. All that is gone for real estate investors today. Can't target by zip code, can't target by purchase behavior, can't target by demographic, except in very broad ways. What we have today on Facebook is targeting broad geographical areas. You want to think states, cities, counties. So the most common approach, and again, Facebook is not my absolute specialty. So again, take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. Different people have different approaches. General approach largely is just targeting a really broad area. It's very similar to putting up a billboard. A lot of people are going to drive by that billboard. You got no control over who that is really, other than the location you put it in. Now, what that tends to produce is a significantly higher volume of leads. So significantly higher volume typically than Google ads, significantly lower cost per lead. So way cheaper generally, but significantly worse close rate. And I would say that the mix is going to be heavily towards the I want retail price sort of tire kicker variety. Now, doesn't mean that doesn't work. And in fact, many investors use Facebook as their primary lead generation platform, absolutely killing it. But what I would say is you need to have a back-end process, an acquisitions team that can handle that well. You need to close well. You need to follow up well. Your systems need to be buttoned up, because if you're just getting sprayed in the face with a fire hose of leads, which is kind of what Facebook does, when most of it's unusable to you, that is just as bad as getting nothing at all. And in fact, in many cases, can be worse.
I would almost argue that, if you're closing less, what's the point? That last number there is what's closing, or the number of investors that are actually investing with us is what matters, right? It doesn't matter how many's coming in the door initially.
Well, yes. And so let's do a thing. We'll do like the previously on the podcast with Dan. All the way back. I think it was all the way back. I can't remember if it was the first episode or the second episode that we did, but we were talking about top of funnel, bottom of funnel, right? Now, if we superimpose what I was just talking about on this mental model, Google is much closer to bottom of funnel. Facebook is much more top of funnel, right? So are there situations in which I just want to build a big audience and I don't necessarily care if every single one of them is ready to close? Absolutely, there are situations where I want to do that. And in fact, for example, if I wanted to, let's take as an example, I wanted to promote this podcast episode, I would have much more success promoting it to a wide variety of real estate investors on Facebook than I would on Google Ads. Because in Google Ads, I got to find something that they're searching for. Maybe they're typing in real estate investing podcast or something, but it's not going to be that many of those people. Whereas if I just target people interested in real estate investing, I could do that, right? So it's all about understanding your purpose. For most investors, people flipping, people wholesaling, Google Ads is going to be by far the superior channel. I would say if you are, for example, also handling retail, let's say you're doing listings, you have someone on your team that, that's an agent, or you're farming those out to a local agent, you're getting a commission or whatever it is, you have some way of profiting off those other leads, and you've got a strong back-end system, you can make a lot of money off Facebook ads. So they have their purposes, right? I think the dark horse in this conversation, the one that is the least proven and maybe the most interesting long-term, is TikTok. Because TikTok skews, I think most people understand, very young, but I think people vastly overestimate the extent to which it is only young people on TikTok. And in fact, TikTok is the fastest growing social media network across all demographics in the United States right now. So TikTok is this platform, well, by the way, significantly easier to run ads on right now than Facebook, provided you can make a video and stuff. And the sheer amount of reach that is possible with TikTok is mind-blowing. I would say that the downsides to TikTok for investors are it's not really proven as a way to generate motivated sellers per se. I think it does skew a little young. And the other thing to think about is that there is a sort of obstacle to get over in terms of creating the ad. Because in Google Ad, you just type up an ad, you're done. TikTok, you got to make a video, right?
Of yourself, potentially.
Yes, exactly. Right. So you got to know what you want to say. You got to come across well. Like that is a real challenge for a lot of people. And so there is a bit of an obstacle there. Now, that could be helpful for you if you are good at that and your competitors aren't, right? I view TikTok largely right now. If investors ask me about it, I view it as this is the channel you start to build your local brand in today with organic marketing. Like if I was an investor today, what I would be doing is turning my business, just my day-to-day business stuff. Hey, I'm walking around a house. Hey, this house I purchased, talking about the marketing I'm doing, talking to people, the testimonials, anything that's happening during my day, I would be putting that stuff on TikTok. And the reason I would be putting it on TikTok is I would be building my audience in advance of when they want to sell. So that when it is time for them to sell, I'm the name at the top of their head. I'm the one that they can remember. Oh yeah, it's a guy on TikTok. I would be doing that. And that's actually how I view TikTok for my own business, is primarily about building my audience for 5 years down the line. So you think about, again, put these on a spectrum. Google is the closest to the bottom of the funnel, the people that are most ready to sell. Facebook's this huge middle chunk of the funnel. Maybe they're ready to sell, maybe they're not, a lot of retail people. TikTok is mostly people who aren't thinking about selling at all. But 5 years from now, probably will be. And if you don't get in front of them, somebody else will.
Yeah, that's a great example right there. Even the long-term thinking of building your audience, even thinking out 3 to 5 years from now, and how to think. And that right there's a great answer too about different social media platforms and maybe some thoughts on when we should use them or how long term, we should be thinking about using them. I wanted to ask you one other thing though, because I know this is so important. I know we experience it and work on it all the time, is this back end process. And I wondered about, do you have an example of a stellar back end process? Let's say, in our case, it would be for investors. Investor comes to the website. Well, or do you have examples of them? Or, I'm sure you have examples of all kinds, but any thoughts on having that stellar back end process to close that investor?
Yeah, I always think about, so this is for relatively early in my career. It's the first time I really understood the importance of this. I've been doing this for maybe a year or two and had a pretty good sense of what I could expect at that point, right? Like certain amount of leads, certain amount of money, certain amount of deals, right? I had these numbers in my head. And I reached out to Joe McCall, who is a really well-known investor coach, et cetera. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I would love to do ads with you. And he was like, sure, we'll give it a shot. And launched in St. Louis, I think was his market. And that dude immediately closed like 2 deals, like the first week. Now, older Dan would probably say like, look, statistical fluctuation would dictate that is going to happen a certain number of times. And maybe don't pop the champagne too early, right? Averages are weird when we'll watch them day to day or whatever. But at the time I was like, oh my God, we're amazing. Like I was like, what did I do to the ads? I must have done some of the ads. And what's the magic, the secret sauce? And I looked through the account and nothing special. None of the numbers were special. Not a lot of lead. I mean, it's just normal. So I called Joe and I was like, hey, I saw you close. It's awesome. We were chatting about it. And I was like, what do you attribute this to? And he was like, I've probably said this 100,000 times since then. He said the number one thing that influences whether you close is speed to lead.
Speed to lead.
So he had a system where when someone came in, they were on the phone with that person on average within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes. They got that person as quickly as humanly possible because he understood every single minute that ticks by is a minute that person is cooling off. If I go 3 hours into the future and I reached out to you and I get that call, like now I'm feeding my toddler or I'm walking the dog or what, like, I don't want to take this call now. And I'm just going to send it to voicemail. I'm going to forget that you exist. And I contacted you, right? In this scenario. So they got them fast. And that has remained when we do every year or so, we'll do a study of our own clients. We'll go through and we'll say, what correlates with success? Is it budget? Is it market? Is it, whatever it is? There are a couple things that correlate with success in online marketing. One's the market that you choose. Not surprisingly, if you're in a really great market, it's easier to have success. And another is how quickly you get the leads on the phone. This is one of the most critical things. And it's going to be true for any marketing channel that you do. It's not just online marketing. Someone calls you off a postcard. You want to get back to that person. If you didn't pick up the phone, you want to get back to them as quickly as humanly possible. And that is true in general for back-end processes. I always think about, just recently I had this conversation and I'm blanking now on who told me this. They're saying 60 to 70% of the deals. Oh, this one, Nick Perry. So I just did a call with Nick Perry, right? Another really great investor coach, was one of my first ever coaching clients. Actually taught him Google Ads. He went on to do virtual wholesaling across the country. Really successful guy. Right now runs a high-level mastermind, teaching other people how to do it. And he is very kind and will often say that like our time together was the reason that he got started, and one of the reasons that he found success, right? So I just caught up with him recently and he was saying something like, 60 to 70% of the deals that he closes are from 6 to 8 months after it became a lead. And in fact, he was saying, it's like, yeah, we just closed a deal that became a lead for us in, I think it was like 2016.
Wow.
They came in on the website in 2016 and they just closed, but they never stop following up. He's got a team. They make sure they touch every single lead in their database on some sort of time frame. And if you aren't answering new leads, you immediately get kicked old leads and start following up with them. And they do that forever until you get taken off their database. So that kind of follow-up just means that you are catching those deals that weren't right when they came in the funnel, but are right now. But the vast majority of investors don't do that. The vast majority of investors, if they don't close or get really strong interest the first time they talk to someone, they mark that lead off as a lost cause and they move on. They just mark it off as a lost cause. I'm telling you, there are millions of dollars left on the table every single day because people either don't want to or don't have the processes to follow up and get people on the phone quickly. If you do nothing else than that, even if you don't do any online marketing, if you only do that stuff, your investing business will be far more efficient. You will have a significant competitive advantage.
I just think it's such a point well made. I mean, you just couldn't say it enough. And we talk about it often on the show. It's like we spend so much money and time, even doing this podcast, right? You know, it's getting people in the door. But so often we'll have lists of thousands of investors that we're not even following up with, right? Like they signed up on the website, but we're not taking the time to follow up with them because we're so focused on getting more people in the door, you know? And so I just want the listener to think about that too. Even, I mean, just what you were just talking about too. I love how the guy you were talking about too, Joe McCall, I think you said, you know, on the phone within 5 minutes. And so, and I'll tell the listener something I know we started doing a while back on this same thought process. I love being at a conference and somebody like me meeting somebody, and let's say I put in their information, you know, or whatever, or they sign up on the website, and them getting a call from our team while we're still at the conference, or maybe even while they're still talking to me. I mean, you talk about impressed, even if they can't answer it, like they're like, whoa, how did you do that? But yes, within 5 minutes, and then they never stop following up. We've not been great at that, but we are trying to improve that. As we've grown our team, it's like we've created processes of how often we are following up with investors to get back in front of them, ensure they know we're still here.
Yeah, man. I will say, right, it's easy for me to say. It's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
And I am as guilty. I'm up here talking about follow-up. I got a list of like 6,000 people. I have an email. It's hard. It's hard to email them regularly. I'm just telling you, I've seen it work in my clients' businesses every day. If you can make it work, even go to upwork.com, find someone who does work in whatever your email system CRM of choice is, and pay them $500 to come in and develop an automated follow-up sequence for you. You're overpaying by this job for $500, by the way, but find someone who's just going to kick butt and just do that, set it up and set it and forget it. If all you did was email every single person on your list, just automatically, right? Automation, you don't have to do this. You just send everybody on the list once a month, a mail that says, hey, did you sell your house yet? Or, hey, any interest in investing this week, or whatever it is. Like what, just a little one-line thing, love Whitney or whatever, right? It's like just love Dan, like whatever it is. Simple, 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 but it's the consistency that matters. So you set it and forget it and you're good.
All right, Dan, few final quick questions. What are some of the most important metrics that you track? Could be personally, professionally, your bench press, or how many days you get up on time, or how many clients you have.
Oh man, that's such a fun question. I thought you were going to say Google Ads specifically. So like, I am you can probably tell, like I love a good spreadsheet. So I've got a personal dashboard that I fill out. Actually, I have an assistant fill it out every week. I track all my financial statements, like balances, all that stuff. I track how often I work out, my weight, my 7-day average weight, my 7-day average resting heart rate variability, my average amount of sleep. I track all sorts of stuff, man. I love this. I'm a nerd for that kind of thing. But for me, I'll tell you the one thing that I track that I think most people don't, which I think is interesting, okay, is I have behind me, you can't really see it, but I've got a board, like a whiteboard. Okay, it's a magnetic whiteboard. And I have on it a Kanban board system, right? So there's a to-do, a doing, and a done. And at the beginning of the week, I put my tasks in the to-do thing that I got to do that week. And then I move them over when I'm doing them, and I'm only allowed to work on the stuff that is in the doing column. And then when I'm done, I move them over to the right, and they're in the done column. Every week, I refresh. but I do something I think which gives me a lot of insight into my life. The number one thing that I have pinpointed that makes me happy or makes me incredibly stressed and anxious is the extent to which I have control over what I work on. I will work people into the ground as long as I'm enjoying it, I'm interested in it, and it's something that I chose. If tasks are getting put on my plate by my team or by my clients or whatever, I'm miserable. So what I do is the tasks that I choose, that I plan every week, I put on these little magnetic cards that dry erase or whatever, so I can change them every week. They're magnetic, it's obvious. They look like this. Okay, there's a little magnetic card. Sits on the con. Anything that is a task that I didn't choose, meaning it either got put on my team or I didn't expect it, gets put on a sticky note, goes on the same board. And every week I step back, I step far enough back so I can see the board, but I can't really read the thing. I unfocus my eyes and I can tell what percentage of this board is sticky notes versus what percentage of the board is magnetic cards. If it's 100% magnetic cards, that means I have perfect control over my workload. And if it's a lot of sticky notes, that means something in my life and business is broken. Last week, a little bit of transparency, it was like 98% sticky notes. So I was like, I need to sit down and fix something in my business. That's what it means, right? So as a quick way of sort of visually understanding this sort of core structural component of my life, that's been the thing is it's given me a lot of insight and it's, I don't know, it works for me. So that's my unique KPI I'll give you.
No, that's a neat way to track that and figure that out. What about the habit that you're disciplined about that has produced the highest return for you?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It's a weekly review. So I have a weekly review process. I do mine every Monday morning. I do it in Roam Research, which is like a note-taking tool, but you could do it in Google Drive, doesn't matter, pen and paper. And all it is a templated sort of set of journaling prompts. I review my sort of daily quick journal of the week. I go over what do I think went well, what didn't go well. I track my progress towards quarterly goals. And I really sit and think about how my life feels, right? Like I really try to sit and spend some time with feeling how I'm experiencing. I think it's like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day that you sort of forget to live the life. And you have these feelings, you have these emotions, but if you don't actually tune into them, at least for me, I can bury them. And so I really spend the time to write out. I spend several hours a week just doing that on Monday. And then what I end up doing is every quarter, I print them all out, take them to a coffee shop. I read through every single week of the quarter. And then I do a similar one for how did this quarter go? You just read through every single week. How'd the quarter go? What were your main takeaways? What were your lessons? What do you need to work on next quarter, right? That sort of rhythm building up to an annual review where I read my quarterly reviews, right? To me, there's so much that happens in your life that at least for me, I just completely forget. I completely forget. So many lessons that I learn and then right out the ear and then into the trash, right? So it's like, for me, it's a way of really trying to internalizing what I'm learning and making myself better just a little bit at a time. And by far, that is the highest impact thing I have ever done. There might be weightlifting would be something that's given me a lot of health and stuff like that. And that's something that I do. But other than that, it's that weekly review process, man. I would not trade that for anything.
That's incredible. Where did you learn that?
I mostly just made it up, to be honest. It's been a long, iterative process. Lots of people have a journaling sort of process. So I've fooled around with a lot of different ones. This has been the one that works for me and kind of my cadence.
Yeah, it's just need to take the time to detail what's happening in your business and go back and review and think and plan. And it's good. It's a good time to do that. What about, how do you like to give back?
Yeah, man. So I'm in this phase of my life where, I don't know, it's interesting. Like the last couple of years have really felt like there was my life up till this point and there's my life after this point. You know what I mean? Like I'm 42. There might just be my age. My kids are 6 and 8. So they're really to the point where they're starting to differentiate as individuals. You start to see them more as people rather than just like the kids, right? And I'm also in this weird position where, I have my business career and I have what I do at AdWords Nerds. I mentioned playing music, there's a large portion of people that know me primarily through music. And for whatever reason, the audience for my music is a lot younger. So it tends to be a lot of people in their 20s. And because of the sort of genre of music, the topic of music or whatever, I get a lot of people writing to me on a fairly regular basis, asking for life advice or saying I'm depressed or saying I don't know what I want to do. I have a blog and a Twitter and stuff, and I've sort of, for however this happened, I've kind of become this like weird internet father figure to a lot of 20 somethings. So it's very odd. And I'm also an actual father figure to my kid, right? So for me, when COVID started, I started dedicating a chunk of every week to a weekly blog. It's called Better Questions, right? So it's at betterquestions.co. It's nothing related to real estate investing at all. It is purely just, it's either productivity or personal philosophy or kind of mindset, or it is, here's how I talk about the weekly review stuff, or I talk about here's how I deal with issues, or here's how you deal with depression, or here's how I dealt with it, right? And to me, that is my way of reaching out to younger people who I really think, like in today's culture, are profoundly disconnected and profoundly alienated, particularly from positive male role models. I think it's incredibly weird, ahistoric situation that we have set up. And so to me, it's like, I sort of found myself in that role. And it's one that I'm like, I found myself here. I didn't really ask for it, but I'm going to kind of lean into that.
Yeah.
And that's been really gratifying, man. It's been really fun and interesting. And right now, that's how I give back.
It's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that and your willingness to give back in that way. And even your time today, you've been very generous with your time and spending a number of segments with us, and you didn't hold back. I mean, appreciate your willingness to just share and teach us about what you're an expert in. And I hope the listeners, I know I am definitely better educated around AdWords and Google Ads versus Facebook and some of that stuff that I know will be helpful. So thank you for that. Tell the listeners again how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you, Dan.
Yeah. So AdWordsNerds.com is the website to go to, ADWORDS nerds.com. Find all sorts of stuff. And if you are interested in this topic, if you go onto the website, you'll find the menu there. You can find it. There's a thing I wrote called The Ultimate Guide to PPC for Real Estate Investors. It is no joke. I think it's like 40,000 words long. And I really detail this stuff like down to the nitty gritty, how to get started, what to do, what to say, how you do it. I really open the sort of curtain and reveal how this stuff works. I think it's really important to do that kind of thing in this industry. So if you are interested, you go to AdWordsNerds.com, search around, you'll find it. That's a great way of learning more and getting started.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.